Welcome to the Real Study with your hosts, Mr. Snitbits,
I was pleasantly surprised.
Black Girl Marvel,
I cried laughing. That was hilarious.
Tyler the Filmmaker,
It's like so much depth. It's like nowadays it's, you got A shot, B shot.
all the movie things,
There's some great wide shots in this.
Janine DeBean,
Each other. They just kind of look like they were having fun and doing their own thing.
produced by Hyena, and me, the Real Study movie voice guy.
But this was the first time where I got to see it told in a way where I was like, oh man.
Let's go to the poster wall.
Hello and welcome to the Real Study. My name is Mr. Snitbits, and with me tonight I've got Janine DeBean and a special guest, Ryan from Boxes from Mama. And we will, of course, talk to Ryan here in a minute. We've got two movies we're doing this evening. We are doing the original 1922 Nosferatu. The Cinema of Evil. Is that right, Ryan? I think that was wrong.
The Symphony
of
Horror.
Evil.
The Symphony of
That's
Horror.
right, of horror. It's got a subtitle that we're kind of fresh to. And then, of course, the Robert Eggers remaking of the Nosferatu 2024. I'm off by about a century. We'll get to both of those movies here in a minute. But first, we're going to move over to the main wall and talk about social media. If you are not already following us on all social media, please do. We are on everything from TikTok to here on YouTube, Twitch, etc. We'd appreciate you guys following us on everything, giving us 5 stars on all the podcast places that you can get our podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google, etc. Spread us around. Let people know about us. We love talking about movies, and we are all huge movie buffs, and that's what we're here for, is talk about movies. But before we talk about the movies we have this evening, our guest Ryan from Boxes from Mama is with us. He has actually sponsored a show previously, which was fun, and gave us a couple of movies that we had never seen before, at least some of us. Tell us, Ryan, what do you do? What is Boxes from Mama, and where can we find you?
Yeah, so Boxes from Mama primarily, where it started out and is the flagship product, is our blind horror movie night box. So essentially the whole idea for that was taken from there is a blind date with a book box. These types of things are not new, but I had never seen anything for film lovers and for horror lovers specifically at this time. And what I wanted was something. I was getting tired of algorithms from every streaming service. I kind of missed the days where you had the cool dude at the movie theater who hooked you up with all the good recommendations. So I wanted to kind of encapsulate that into my own box. But you can't just do a movie; you got to fill it with goodies. So there's snacks and a whole bunch of other goodies. And as well, we make are these 3D printed character nooks. There are disc nook versions, which are more Blu-ray size to fit amongst your collections, and then book nook size as well. Tons of horror characters, and then we're also venturing outside of horror as well, starting to get some comic book characters and video game characters as well. All of our stuff is on boxoframa.com. Also, you can also purchase through TikTok and Instagram. We're on all the socials that you could possibly think of.
Like all the ones right there above your head, right? All those ones there.
Yep.
So, please do follow Boxes from Mama, support Boxes from Mama. I have a couple of the disc nooks here, as you can see. I've got the Alien one, and I've got the Ghostface one as well, right there. And I've also done the Blind Movie Night box, which is awesome.
Thank you.
Janine, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. If you can hear all the commotion outside, I am not in my typical place.
You're down in LA, right? And
Yes.
enjoying some time. Nice.
Yeah,
cool.
I went to a fork and film last night of Princess and the Frog with a friend. So it was a really fun experience getting to eat the food from the movie. We even had some fried frog legs. That was an interesting experience.
Do they taste like chicken?
They do. It's like a weird fish chicken hybrid. Like it has almost the texture of fish, like kind of flaky.
Oh,
but tastes
flaky. Okay.
Yeah.
But tastes like chicken.
Yeah.
See, I've had alligator, which tastes more like it's like a fishy burger, like almost like beefy in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. But
Yeah.
those Forkin film, those sound like a blast.
Yeah, no, so it's my
Um,
third time going, and yeah, me and my friend that I went with were Disney girlies, and so we had our Tiana and Charlotte shirts, and took
nice.
pictures, and yeah, got some great food, great cocktails. It was a really fun time.
That sounds like an awesome time. And now you're here with us for more fun talking about horror movies. Speaking of movies, no news tonight, but we do have a real roundup for myself and Janine. And since I have been on this crusade to watch 365 films in 2025, I am now ahead of the curve. I am over 70, and we haven't even hit day 70 of the year. So I am over a movie a day, which is as hard as it sounds. So I'll go straight into the movie I watched this week, which was Kevin Smith's The 4:30 movie. I was putting this one off mostly because it's the last film from Kevin Smith I haven't seen, and so it's almost like the anticipation of, ooh, there's one more I haven't seen. But there was also the last of his films I saw was Clerks 3, and I bawled like crazy for an hour after that movie, so I was maybe a little gun shy. This is not a sad movie. This is a great, simple, romantic comedy that really just... It was made by a filmmaker who loves film for people who love film. That's what this movie is. If you don't love film, you probably won't like this movie that much, which is sad because you should love film. But it had great tones. It reminded me of my younger years because the theater and the clothes was the 80s, and it reminded me of that time. The characters all felt like real people rather than just these perfect movie stars. You know, no offense to Timothée Chalamet, but we didn't have any Chalamets in this movie because we didn't need them. And it's really just a simple story about this kid right here on the end wanting to get together with the girl that he's in love with, essentially, and everything unfolds at the movie theater. Tons of movie references, tons of great jokes, sweet movie.
Nice.
And a love note to filmmaking and filmmakers.
Love that.
In that sense. Yeah. If you like Kevin Smith even a little bit, you'll like the 4:30 movie. Janine, you got to see Emma, which is another version of
Yes.
the Jane Austen's book. And this one's Anya Taylor-Joy, is that correct?
Yeah, so on my other podcast channel, the It's a Wonderful podcast feed, on our show Morgan Hasn't Seen, we're doing a Jane Austen series right now covering those adapted films. And so in that series, we're talking about the 1996 version. So I thought I would do a little extra homework and check out the 2020 version for the first time to kind of give a little bit of compare and contrast in the episode. So I had never seen this version before. I'm very familiar with the 1996 version, also very familiar with Clueless being a modern adaptation of that story. So I kind of wanted to see how this fared amongst those that I do really enjoy. And I will say I still think I prefer the 1996 version, but I really liked this take on it. I think it's more kind of the actresses that I was finding myself comparing in terms of their interpretation of the character. Because I think Anya Taylor-Joy tends to give off more of a very kind of confident, self-aware kind of character in other roles she's played. Think of things like Split or The Menu. She's kind of very fully aware of what's going on. She asserts herself and that kind of thing. But I think what the character Emma needs is to be not very self-aware. She kind of thinks what she's doing is right. She thinks she's well-intentioned, without kind of considering anyone else's opinion. So, I think Gwyneth Paltrow is much better suited to play to that. Because, I mean, if you just think of Gwyneth Paltrow in her real life, she's very not self-aware.
That naivety, right?
Yes, someone who, sells $100 candle that smells like her lady parts and being a Nepo baby really plays to someone who doesn't quite...
What do you mean I was in Spider-Man?
Right?
Right, yeah.
Really plays to someone who doesn't quite get it, whether their intentions are good or not.
Right.
And so she was...
Sometimes it's just the perfect person for the role, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Anya, her Emma, while also not kind of feeling malicious, felt just a little bit colder because she did feel like she was kind of aware of other people's choices and other people's wants, but still kind of determined to do things her way. Whereas Gwyneth felt like her way was right, but she really didn't think about other people's considerations.
I like it.
Yeah.
I just watched another Anya Taylor. I watched The Northman with Anya Taylor-Joy, and that
Yeah.
I've been branching out with her. I also watched The Last Night in Soho, so I've been throwing in a few of hers this year.
Yeah, no, she's great. She's great. Yes.
She
Also, I would
is.
say 1996 Emma, the guys were cuter.
Oh, okay.
I did
Those
not find
90s
myself
dudes.
swooning for the guys in the 2020 version.
Right. Well, yeah. My wife put on a video the other day, not a video, but a thumbnail for a movie, and we were looking at the poster, and we were like, "Do we know anybody in this poster at
Right?
all?"
Yeah.
And I'm starting to like. I was like, "Man!" And then I look at the actors that I love, and they're all like gray. All of them are gray.
Yeah.
All of them. Like, when did that happen? And
Yeah.
it's like the last 3 years, all of them got old. But then I'm sitting out here with Gray, so what am I talking about? Anyway, so those are the two movies for the Reel Roundup that we do suggest. So, of course, you guys have some extra suggestions, but we are here for two very spooky, very big films, big in a couple of different ways. So the very first movie we're going to move to is Nosferatu, 1922. This is, of course, a German film, one of the German expressionist films from the era. Also, famously sits next to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. These are some of the two most important films of the era. And this is basically an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but not legally. They went ahead and did it without the rights. And this film is weird because it technically shouldn't exist. We have it because people were able to find copies of it after
Like,
many were
together.
destroyed.
Yeah.
And so we get to see great cinema from an era that we may not have normally gotten to see it. But I'm assuming everybody on the panel had seen this one before because it is such a classic, and we are all classic fans. Is anybody, Janine, had you not seen this before?
So I had never seen it in full until I watched it before going to see the new version in theaters.
All right.
So this is my second time seeing it fully all the way through. Yeah.
So still fresh, new to you, but
Yeah.
you've seen it. This will be your second time around. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we're going to go with the guest, since technically we've all seen the movie, because we usually try to go with who's never seen it. Ryan, tell us your just initial thoughts on Nosferatu, and then we can get into the meat of it after we've all given our initial thoughts.
Yeah. So the thing, I mean, for the 1922, when talking about like with the classic films, we've mentioned before. I mean, it's a bit of a acquired taste for people, for many, even people that are movie fans, because I mean, classic film. I mean, that it's a transition from stage to screen. The acting develops decade by decade, so there are some growing pains that that occurred through time. But it takes one that the influence that it had on modern cinema is so huge and so profound that even though it is old, it still has so much that feels modern. And I think that this film is exactly that. I mean, because it with a 90-minute or near 90-minute runtime of a silent film from 1922, it can move at the pace of a modern film. There are things that I still personally think are genuinely scary in this film. Um, and the only complaint that I would give this film is the it's not a complaint, but just the exaggerated acting that comes from the transition from stage to screen. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is a masterpiece. Love it.
All right. Janine, what do you think about Nosferatu, 1922?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with those aspects in terms of it feeling a little too comical because of the over exaggerated acting, which, is just a product of its time. But it was really fun to see the kind of problem solving in terms of very early cinema, trying to do these really kind of fantastical tricks with what they had available to them. So I liked kind of getting this crash course of kind of guerrilla filmmaking in terms of using double exposures or stop motion and these kinds of things to give the film this fantastical magical element. So those were kind of the things that stood out to me in this film. I will say also, just kind of the lore of it, the knowing of it and about it, but not having seen it on my first time watch, I think I was expecting to have Count Orlok be kind of hidden for a majority of the film and then kind of
Mm,
have this big reveal. So when it wasn't that, it was a bit of a surprise, for
I see.
sure. But I did
No, I
think,
like that.
the look
I
of
see.
him was very still haunting and chilling. And, I was
Yeah.
kind of just sitting waiting for the iconic shadow moments because I think that's what everybody knows of this film for
Well, the
sure.
one
So,
up the stairs, where he's
Yep.
got the
yes,
hands like
I
this and he's like
actually,
creepy like this up the
yeah,
stairs is
I
pretty
actually got my
fantastic.
co-host Morgan a candle of that. So you can get like a little
Nice.
tea light candle that like casts the shadow on your wall.
I like
So,
it. I like it.
yeah.
For myself, this is like the third time I've seen it. Because I got into this kick of looking into history of film and then horror history, and so like that is 100% going to you're going to hit that pretty quickly in the horror history. Um, there is something that if you know the Bram Stoker's Dracula story perfectly, which I've seen the Francis Ford Coppola one too many times, and I've seen the Bela Lugosi one several times. So, and I've read the book, so like I know it really well. So I'm sitting there going, "Oh, okay, this is just Mia, and this is just you know uh, Renfield, and all of these things just
Yeah.
kind of made sense." So you can see the ripoff, but there is still this other fantastical element that isn't in Bram Stoker's Dracula. That it's slightly different. It's almost like a parallel universe version of Dracula,
Yeah.
which I do like. But the filmmaking of it all, I think, is absolutely the reason to watch this. And I tell people this with silent film: anything pre-talkie, so basically pre 1930, is going to be harder. But what you do is just find it on a streaming service or a channel or YouTube where you can crank up the speed to 1.5 times, and it sits really nicely in this more modern speed and
Yeah.
doesn't look janky. It doesn't they don't look like they're going too fast.
Yeah.
And it's enough time to read what they give you. So that helps. But at the same time, if you're a modern movie watcher, watch the film with that in mind and see what they're doing. And they are doing so many of the same shots, but they're doing it with these giant box cameras, and they're doing it in weird places. The spider shot, I was thinking about, I was like, holy crap, how
Yeah.
hard that would be to get
Yeah.
in 1921, 22, with this huge camera. Did they like put a spider in a terrarium and then film it, or did they rig a camera up into a corner and try to film that spider the way they did? I think with lighting, they probably had to put it into a box or something, realistically. But the tricks, I love a lot of the tricks, a lot of the film tricks. Orlok looks great, but he also still now 102 years later, 103 years later, he looks a little like a giant rat. But I
Yeah.
think that kind of works.
Yeah, and I think it was
because of the rats.
intentional because
Right.
of
The
the rats
plague.
and the plague spreading. So the
Mhm.
teeth,
Right.
the long fingers, all of that I think was meant to kind of evoke that. Yeah.
Agreed. And that's why I wanted to mention that, because we're going to talk about the other film, and there are things that are translations that I think are interesting, that are going to be weird. What did you guys think of the approach of the use of, what am I trying to say here? The use, you mentioned, I think somebody did mention the stop motion animation. So it was used a little bit here and there to do those fantastical things. I think Janine, you mentioned
Yeah.
that. There was one scene that I think it was the negative was reversed, where he was taking him to the castle.
Yeah, because
And
they
I
wanted to
couldn't
give like the
tell.
forest this white kind of mysterious glow. And
Right,
so that
right.
so they think they cloaked him and like the carriage in like white fabric to be able to kind of achieve that, I think. I saw somewhere. Yeah.
Which makes sense, because of course the first carriage is covered in black, which I think is great. And I love that Orlok shows up himself. He's like, I'll just go get him myself.
Yeah,
I don't
which
need
also
the
felt very
servant."
kind of cartoonish, like cover my face.
It
That's
did.
not me.
It
Right?
does. I think it's also, I mean, like that sort of disguise element is also of the time, but I still like it, because even though you see Orlog very early on,
Mhm.
you also kind of don't, though, because then when you see the creepy Orlog, it's vastly different. I mean, even though
Yeah.
we can still see some of the features, they're just it's I don't know, it seems just more like a skinny hunchback in Russia versus
The
this
long,
like
long fingers. The
right, yeah.
yes,
Once
Right.
we
the
actually get probably I think the shot of him in the doorway
doorway.
standing
Hmm.
rigid, I
Yeah,
think is one of the first times, and like
and
that
then
to
in the
me
ship. Yeah,
is still terrifying.
Right.
I think it is very scary.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the cat scene in the original wasn't done as what justice in the newer version because she shows joy, like Ellen actually shows joy for a few minutes in the original that I
Yep.
don't see done with Ellen in the new one at all. Like I don't feel like she feels joy at all through that entire film,
I think it's supposed to
even
be
when she's around her
Because,
well,
because
or her
yeah, I think they
husband.
added that history with her and
exactly,
Orlok
yeah, that
is what kind of is constantly looming. But I do get
Right,
what you're saying
yeah,
because she talks about how James has brought her this normalcy and peace, but
right,
we only see very soft light glimmers of that
right.
peace and
But the
normalcy.
original, they like give it to you. They're like,
Yeah,
here it is. There are liberties, and we will definitely talk about those liberties that are taken because you're changing it from an hour and a half to 2 hours. So you got to fill in not only that half an hour, but also there's a lot of you know exposition that has to happen that did not happen in the original. Um,
yeah,
I do like that it's this like the book has something to do with the lore because of the reading of the book.
hmm,
Um, which is something that was changed. But again, that's fine. People are going to change things. In fact, if you don't change something, it's going to be kind of weird. Like, why did you remake that if you weren't going to put your own
right.
spin on it?
yeah.
But I also love that they use the book to let us read what's going on. Like
What's
that's a
going on?
clever way
Yeah, to
to let
without
us have a
exposition,
reason.
to
Right.
let the character kind of we're learning things with him, so there's an
Right.
excuse for it to be explained that way.
That's a
Yeah,
simple, clever tactic to get
yeah,
us in, especially in a silent era where they're going to be putting it on screen anyway. Because nowadays, you put something on screen for people to read, they're going to be like, "Why are you doing this? I don't
yeah.
want to read
I
this."
don't feel like reading. Yeah,
I mean,
Right.
it's also a much better device, a much more entertaining and enjoyable device than just having like an exposition dump from title cards of
yeah,
like two characters talking, and then so we just get like a couple of title cards that say everything. Just like this kind of frantic turning of the pages
Hmm.
was a much more entertaining exposition device.
yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good element to it.
I love it. The music is interesting to talk about because I don't know if we can say for sure if this was the music played in cinemas.
I don't.
I don't think
Yeah.
so. I think it's very much a case of like Metropolis, where they kind of created a new
Right.
score to put over it. Because I think I watched the Kino version, and I think also the kind of redone version of Metropolis was also a Kino thing. So they um, added in the music. Yeah,
Well, and from what I read, a lot of the old cinemas would have a piano player or a person that would
hmm,
play, and they would
yeah,
play kind of play this version of the songs that you play.
yeah,
And it wasn't always the same. You could go to a cinema in a different city and technically get different music because
yeah,
they didn't send music sheets with the film.
yeah,
They were just like fill in the music,
yeah.
which is weird.
Yeah, it should be like
Music
a
wasn't
Yeah,
lounge
it's
important in
player.
movies
interesting.
until like the 50s. It
Yeah,
drives me nuts.
and you think it would
Um,
be the most important at the time when that was all you could hear, right?
Right. But no, like the bosses back, the studio bosses literally like, don't worry about the music or don't want to spend a lot of money on the music. Just put music to the movie. Let's move on. And that's why a lot of people hate listening to old movies because the music sucks. And I'm sorry, it does. Like a lot of the old music sucks because they didn't care. They didn't John Williams it up. Like
Yeah,
imagine
No,
if
I
they
mean
had.
they were still just happy that there was big pictures, you know. So
Right.
it's like
yeah.
That's
they
a
were
Just
great
like
point.
happy to be
they
there
were like,
with
this
what
is
they
what
had.
we got. Like, you know,
Yeah,
what about the
Right.
music? Who cares?
yeah,
There's a motion picture, like, you know.
Right.
yeah,
So totally get that. But yeah, because it would be like a lounge player, but depending on which cinema you went to, because there
Right.
would just be a piano player riffing. Um, just
Oh,
to
look, it's
go
Sinister.
along
Play
with
the
it.
Sinister
Yeah,
part,
yeah,
right? Oh,
a
it's
hundred
yeah.
yeah.
percent. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Right. It's wild. Um, yeah, it's so strange. The thing about when I think about Orlok the first time we see him on screen, it's hard not to like kind of giggle, like it's oh,
I
what a
know.
cute
I
little
know.
rat guy, right?
I
I
know.
giggle, but then
He's cute.
my upper brain has to go, okay, sit yourself down in the theater. It's 1922.
Exactly.
World
How
War
would this
II
make you
just got, or
feel
World War One
seeing
just
this?
ended. What are you thinking, right? And this is in Germany even. So like, okay, I'm in that political mind frame. And then I've already grown up watching these fantastical things, including, remember that first movie I saw where there was a train that drove at me and that was the whole movie? Holy crap, what an impact that had on
Yeah.
me. I try to do this. I try to put myself in this mind frame because it
100%.
helps watch these movies.
Well, it does. I mean, think about, well, look at from Orlok's design. So just that costume. So even though to me, I still think that it is very, very, very creepy. If somebody said, well, it looks stupid or so, it's like, well, imagine if you were a little German boy in the
Right,
1920s
right.
sitting in the theater and seeing that,
Yeah.
you, you would have a heart attack.
Yeah.
YouTube or Google, Patton Oswalt talks about his experience with Nosferatu at 5 years old
Okay, I
because
haven't
Yeah, I
seen
haven't
that.
seen that.
he said they put it on for him when they were just at a like school club for kids and they just put it on. And he said the kids were all just like, what is, they were terrified. Um,
Because
and I
it's
love his
scary.
explanation. I don't want to ruin it. Let him
I'm
tell
gonna
it.
look it
I'm
up.
much better than I would. But he's not wrong, especially older cinema. There's more of a like snapshotty, vivid, like dream memory kind of feel about it rather than a narrative. Especially if you skip the title cards,
Yeah.
then you just, it's all just sequences. But again, if you know Dracula, but a 5-year-old Patton Oswalt probably wouldn't know Dracula. But if you know Dracula, you know the story. Other than the plague. Um, yeah, this movie's interesting. I think it's been talked about by billions of people at this point, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's so important to revisit this one and others like it because of their importance. I don't think we've stressed enough the importance of a film like this and what it did. This did for cinema what Citizen Kane did for cinema, what Star Wars did for cinema. Like it really pushed us forward.
Well, and for this one, I mean, when it comes to the reason that I'm bringing this up, so when you had said Citizen Kane, because it brought me to something that I was thinking about the other day, is that with classic films, especially ones that are groundbreaking films, whether it be at the time or through the influence over the years,
Yeah.
there are not a whole lot that I will go back to. Like I'm not going back to Citizen Kane. I've seen it twice. I don't have a desire. Same thing with like Gone with the Wind, things like that. But
Sure.
there are those ones, and I think Nosferatu is one of those for me that it's like I would have no problem going back into it because there is, and even from a modern film watcher perspective, I think that it has a lot of things that even a modern like a modern audience could find enjoyment in all throughout, there, because there will be some things that they find a little bit more boring. I'm glued the whole time, but and I get that, but it's from the nerdy side of it though. We just watching, like when you look at just how they played with angles, with seeing you know Emma doing her zombie walk on the railing, even
Yeah.
though I mean it's on the floor, there's just a black sheet behind them, but the camera is through an open doorway. So the way that it's positioned in there, it made, because I have a big fear of heights. So when that first scene came up, it made my heart flip because it looked very, very convincing. And it's, again, that's one of those things that it's like freaking 1921, 1922, like, and it's just
Yeah.
that, and this is just a treasure trove of that kind of stuff. This Trip to the Moon, Metropolis, like it's
Right.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I put it right in there with all the with Mie's
Yep.
and all of it. Any closing thoughts on Nosferatu, Janine, at all?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, what you were talking about with kind of how it was filmed, I liked kind of the bits of color we got because I mean, day for night is something we get even done in films today, where you kind of put this blue cast, and so I
Mhm.
liked seeing that them using that kind of technique that early on to kind of create these night scenes because obviously you can tell it's day, but to put that kind
Right.
of thought into it. And then also, you expect the whole thing to be in black and white, but you get these shades of purple or yellow or blue to kind of signify the different times of day, which is a very important plot point in the film. So I like that they found interesting ways to take that into consideration. So
this is a silly little thing I just thought of, but I remembered I giggled a little bit when Orlok was in town once he came over on the ship, and he's just rocking his freaking casket under his arm.
Oh yeah, he's just walking around.
And he's just like, and I'm like, and that's full of dirt. Okay, that's full of his soil. So that is heavy as shit.
Yeah.
Which shows how strong he is. He is wildly strong. And I love it. He's just doing his thing. Gotta get it there. And then some of those moments, like seeing how many people that they got into the street with there were 5 people in the procession of caskets. You're like, wow, they're like, this is a pretty big production. Like, this is not
because these aren't
one
set
guy,
or anything.
right?
These are towns and real life places. Yeah.
And that's another thing. I noticed some of the cottages are like some of my absolute favorite architecture. I'm just like, God, somebody give me that cottage? I'll take that and move to Germany because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Ryan?
No, I mean, just kind of, again, I mean, echoing obviously, yes, the importance, and I know to everybody, the importance isn't always the reason to watch it, but there is just so much that you can see from things that came out 3 years ago that you can see in this kind of film because of just how innovative it was. And one of my favorite scenes in it is to showcase the spectral quality of Orlok is when Hutter gets in the carriage and it does that like really fast. If you put the Benny Hill music to that,
right,
it would probably be amazing.
Yes,
fantastic.
I would recommend watching the dead meat kill count on Nosferatu because he does kind of comically call out all those scenes that look kind of silly. He makes some fun jokes about that stuff, and he also gives a lot of great behind the scenes information. So all of the kind of things that I'm talking about, and I sound really smart about, I learned from that kill count. So
it's not like I'm gonna not bring up or kind of like try to defend, which none of us are doing, like the goofier moments and the sillier moments, because some are, I mean, they're pretty much all really a product of the time because it was the trend. And in stage acting, you had to be able to reach the person in the back. So this was, it took a while. I mean, look, I mean, it's nowadays everybody can get real close and we can whisper, where that's not how it was back then. And then so you can see the progression. So like, yeah, there's things that are goofy, but it's like, don't let that discourage you because everybody thinks that they're goofy because it's a product of the time.
And it's okay to laugh, even giggle at it, but then recognize the moments that are still serious and
because it's not being disrespectful to the film at all. Because it's in the same way that you would laugh at older fashions throughout the years that may seem goofy today. It's the same exact thing.
Right. Yeah. But you too would wear bell bottoms if you were born in 1950. I'm sorry, you would. Although bell bottoms have come back. What am I talking about? They flare out to 1 million miles now. There was one other little thing, and then we'll move on because we do have 23 minutes before the show will be over, and that's a hard 23 minutes. The microscopic shots they did with the professor were pretty interesting as well. And if you were, this is 1921, if you had never seen or known anything about microscopes, you'd be like, what the hell is that? Like, what is the scary thing on the screen? So again, scary is relative. You go back when you've never seen these things, and it would probably scare the shit out of you.
I never thought about that being like a scare, but because like when I was talking about like his design and imagine being in an audience member, imagine being an audience member and seeing that. I didn't think about something like that during the time too.
And how many people had seen a Venus flytrap even, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have that desensitized nature that we do, having seen so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we have a century of film to desensitize us, which is really unfortunate.
Exactly.
And some deeper corners of the internet in the early years of it too.
Let's not talk about how many girls or cups. Okay, we don't need to get into all of those things. Right. Oh Lord, We are moving on. Okay. We're gonna rate Nosferatu. This is tricky because you're rating a film that is literally 102 years old and is such a classic. But we do ratings based on our own scale here, so you will choose what your 1 through 10 is. An example I like to use is Janine. She says everything gets at least a 1 because you made a movie, and good for you. That's hard to do,
I agree.
which I like.
Love it.
So my 10s are usually I'll watch that 20 times. That's a 10. Doesn't mean it's the best movie ever made. Just means I'll watch it a lot. So because we started with you, Ryan, I'm going to start with you on the rating 1 through 10. What do you rate Nosferatu?
So my rating systems are very much like yours. It's all personal enjoyment down to what I got out of it and its rewatchability for it. I mean, Nosferatu for me is a 10, which is not, I mean, like, I'll give some of those out, but I mean, it's not, I don't throw them around so often.
Sure.
But it's just, I don't know, man. I mean, even in the parts that are slower, it's just like, it's a kid in a candy store for a film lover, for a horror lover. And it doesn't, I mean, it is old, but it doesn't get old. So
I like
I,
that.
it's just, to me, it's a 10.
I like that a lot. It is old, but it doesn't get old.
Yeah.
I really
It's
like that.
true. Yeah.
All right, Janine, what do you rate Nosferatu?
For me, I don't see it as something that I would kind of continually rewatch. But I mean, I only watched it a few months ago, and like I kind of was anticipating watching it again. And just for the marvel that it is, for all of the things that it did for modern cinema, for all the creativity of what they had with those limitations, I would give it a 9.
A 9. All right. I think I'm going to echo the 9. It's one that I've seen a few times. I don't think I'm going to dive back into it soon because I just dove into it a
Yeah.
couple times. But I think in 5 years, if I'm thinking about old movies again, I might revisit it to sample some things, or maybe break it down again, or reattribute what I've learned from other classics and come back again. Kind of like rereading a book. Um, yeah. So 9 for me as well.
Yeah.
So that's a solid rating. Now we're going to move on to Nosferatu. That's weird. 2024. This is, of course, a Robert Eggers film. As far as I know, this is his 4th major film. He hasn't done a ton of films because he puts a lot of time and effort into them. And as anybody knows, Robert Eggers will go out of his way to be as authentically accurate to the era, the region. Like, the dude tries to nail things down. So let's go a different order. Janine, what did you think of Eggers' Nosferatu?
So yeah, I think this film had a really unique kind of play around aspect in terms of, we talked about being desensitized. I think we are desensitized to the concept of remakes. Because I think a lot of times they are made for the cash grab to, bank off of a known IP and really not the substance of expanding a story or giving a different perspective on something or changing anything. But because this film is over 100 years old, you have that fun playground to take the base elements and expand them and use the tools that you now have with modern filmmaking to flesh things out and give it a more fantastical quality. So I loved that he did in fact take those opportunities to give it that more of a fantasy vibe, like when he's sitting in the chair and he looks over at that kind of figure on the fireplace and it turns and looks at him.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved things like that. Obviously, beautiful cinematography. I like that they made the decision to change the look of Orlok to distinguish this film, but also still very creepy. And it was a kind of a fun thing to think about that. Yeah, I think, Skarsgård had the ability to create this voice for this character because he didn't have one. So, I think there was a lot of kind of maybe contention about, or discourse about the voice that he chose, but
Right.
he was able to do that because we never heard this character have a voice. So I liked kind of thinking about the concept of what this film was able to do, expanding beyond, what the original's limitations were, which made it very different from any remake because I think, a remake is made not too far off from when the original was made. So a huge gap here to kind of make this film a bit of a playground for yourself, which I really loved.
I like the way you put that. What did you think, Ryan?
Um, yeah, that's actually said- Janine said it really, really well. But for me, this was one that I had. I didn't see it right when it came out, and then I had kind of really tried to avoid as much information about it as possible. I mean, I looked at the design once or twice, but I'm an Eggers fan, so I knew I was going to be in the camp that really enjoyed this movie. Um, and to me, it's just everything that if you like Eggers' previous movies, this is everything that he does turned up to 11. Because one of the things that he really prides himself on, beside with all that historical accuracy, is just vibe, atmosphere,
Hmm.
and this is drenched in it.
Yeah.
Um, and and then so there are so many things that I did enjoy because he's got multiple source materials to pull from.
Hmm.
The actual the novel to the 1922, you can put in Herzog stuff in there. You could take anything that you want, and then you've also got Vlad the Impaler, which drawing from Vlad for Orlok's design was brilliant. I thought it
For the
was
mustache,
wonderful.
right?
Yeah, it was
Specifically.
brilliant. And it was a great way to differentiate and then also stay as true as possible to the source material because, you know, Dracula or Nosferatu, the source material is segmented into so many different parts.
Right.
And being able to pull from all of it to make something wholly unique. And one of the most disturbing aspects of it for me was probably my favorite inclusion that he did, which is for the highly sexualized nature
Oh
of it
Right.
yeah.
because the feeding of with vampires stuff like that. I mean, Anne Rice loves to kind of lean on that side of it. It is
Yeah.
sexualized. It's supposed to be romanticized to a degree. I mean, with the Brides of Dracula and everything like that. And then
Right.
so really going into this because before you start to see some of the feedings, you're kind of like, well, what are they talking about doing here? Because
Yeah.
it is
It's
very
kind of in the
sexualized.
same vein. Yeah.
It,
Right.
and I love that, and I think maybe that comes off as cringy or icky to some people that maybe did not like the film, but just for me, who it was a boy obsessed with Dracula, so tried to find everything you could about it. Seeing that included was like, Eggers put more time and care into it than I thought he was going to. I already knew he would, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And I mean, the cast is a knockout. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
knockout performances. Probably my when it comes with Willem Dafoe, one of my favorite performances of his. I'm glad that him and Eggers keep working together because he was a vital part to kind of bridge some of the story gaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, he
And be
was a
this greater
vital
good character.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because they
I
used the
really,
professor who was only in the original for like just a few
Just a
yeah,
little brief
moments.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. And then so when it showed who Willem Dafoe was going to be playing, I was a little miffed because I was like, he kind of got a throwaway character. Like I've always seen, Willem right up there, but his character is incredibly important because
Right.
he plays the bridge for the
Well,
Yeah.
audience.
he is Van Helsing, right? He's the Van Helsing
Exactly.
Essentially.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So to be able to have that, and that goes into the point of Eggers. Yes, it is a remake of the 1922 Nosferatu, but it's so much more than that because he can play with as much of the material as possible to truly
Yeah.
make his own. And I think the only person that could have probably come close to doing something that hits all cylinders for me or maybe like it'd be a very different movie, but I think stylishly it would be very much impressive. Be Del Toro, because
Mm.
take out the reds from Crimson Peak and put some blues in there, and I think we'll kind of have that same sort of atmosphere.
Well,
Um,
let me run with that because I like the idea of Eggers is doing the vampire Dracula deal while we've
mhm.
now got Del Toro doing Frankenstein, which is going to have it's almost like those two stories which are juggernauts,
Yeah,
but now we have two juggernaut or directors doing. It's going to be the movies will pair very nicely. I can already tell. I don't even have to watch Frankenstein. for to know that it will pair nicely with this.
And I really hope too that I mean I would hope that they are admirers of each other.
I hope so.
So I would hope so. But what I really hope too is that because 100% that's why you two juggernauts creating two juggernauts and going
Yeah.
after each other. So I hope that this creates like a fire of competition between each of them
Yeah.
because I think that this is needed though because I don't know about you guys, but with following Edgar's work before and then seeing Nosferatu, after watching it, I did think I was like, I don't think he can do this again because he's kept up with it so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, The Witch blew me away. The Lighthouse is my favorite.
The Lighthouse is
Um,
so good.
and then so, but and then you get the Northman, and this was just kind of everything he does. But it seems like it's almost like he hit the treadmill really hard on this one.
Right.
So it's like I don't know if you're gonna be able to do it again. But thinking about it this way, like maybe the fire of like he's got to compete against Del Toro.
That'd be
You
nice,
know,
or at least
who
like
knows?
they can, we'll see. The one-offs
They
would
can
be fine
spar a
too.
little
Like
bit.
I can see that too.
Of
So
course.
this is the thought when I'm watching the beginning of Nosferatu 2024. My immediate thought was, holy shit, Robert Eggers is out Tim Burtoning Tim Burton, and now there's no going back. Like Tim Burton will do it, and it'll look childish now. It'll look so fucking childish. And if you look at Beetlejuice compared to this is what Tim Burton used to do for us in the 90s. Like he would give us this with that 90s spin, but it became Batman and Robin in a way. And I'm not saying that he did that, but like his career sort of did that. Like it
Yeah.
kind of went down that path.
Burton kind of became a parody of himself after a while.
Right.
Yeah.
But somebody was able to take this gothic black and white, the snow, it's fucking beautiful.
Yeah,
Like
and still
it is
kind of
so
capture that
beautiful.
energy, create this really ominous vibe,
Right.
while still feeling very much in that time period.
Right. So I want to talk about a couple of actors because these performances I think stuck out in a great way. Nicholas Hoult, keep doing what you're doing. Like you
Yes.
literally,
Oh yes.
whatever movie you want to do, you're going to be
great.
somebody else, and you are one of the best character actors today. Like you are able to switch around pretty damn well. Aaron Taylor Johnson. At one point, I was like, "You know who that is?" To my wife, I was like, "Bassy, you know who that is?" And she's like, "No," and I was like, "That's Kick-Ass," and she's like, "No, it's not." And like, that is Kick-Ass. It's Aaron Taylor Johnson. When he brings it, like I think that he really adds with this role that, of course, in the original is barely there.
Yeah,
he's
we
a
don't even get a
background
story
character.
with them. So I love the
So
relationship
was
with him
Emma
and his
kind of
wife.
in the original one.
Yeah.
Right, and I love his kids. That not the
Yes.
scene where their demise is
Yeah.
awful,
Ooh.
but the whole like scene where they're like, "Daddy, the monster's gonna get it,"
Yeah,
which is
the
of course
fact
foreshadowing.
that he's
But
obsessed
like,
with his wife and his children and
Right.
excited to have a third, and like, because I
but
think
that
most
makes
men in
when
that
the
era
shit
are
goes down,
depicted as their
right?
family is kind of an
Yeah.
accessory. So the fact
Right.
that he loves his family to death just kind of
Right.
really
Li-
adds to the
literally.
trajectory of what
Can we-
happens to his character.
Right.
Can we talk for a second though about why people were so hung up about the beginning of Terrifier 3, but nobody's talking about this?
Oh yeah,
That scene was way more intense than what occurs in Terrifier 3 in the
Yeah.
beginning of that because this threw
But it
me
is done
off
in shadow,
guard.
so that's kind of the difference, I think, maybe.
I don't because there's nothing in Terrifier 3. It's all sounds.
yeah.
Right.
You
It's
don't
all
see
off
it.
screen.
Yeah,
It's all
Mhm.
this. I mean, you saw the light.
You watch a body, and then you watch
it-
him take the
yeah.
chunk and then
And just
drop
kinda
the
toss
second
it,
body.
yeah.
Yeah.
It took me by surprise, but there are a lot of those moments in this movie. Whereas I don't think, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think Eggers set out to make a scary movie, but there are plenty of more horrifying moments that he kind of seems to sneak in there because I think to me it seems like the kind of the atmosphere and the feel is kind of what drives him the most.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was set out to make a scary film because at the end of the day, horror is subjective, and he wanted
Well,
to
and
do
this
what he
has
wanted to
a
do.
romance of, romantic kind
Exactly.
of edge to
Well,
it.
yeah, like what you
Yeah.
talked about with kind of the biting being this more intimate thing, because
Yeah.
like I
Right.
think in the original, it's the typical neck bite, but
Yep.
here it's like right on the chest, right on your heart, and that's kind of the
Right.
focal point, even for
Yeah.
James being bitten there as well. So really adding to the kind of horny eroticism
Well,
of this.
so the hump sucking, I don't know how else to say that,
Yeah, pretty much.
moment is terrifying.
It
The
is.
idea of being bit by a vampire, I'm like, okay, you're gonna turn me into
But you
one
can,
even?
he's
Okay, I'm done.
physically
But if you're
using
gonna
his
hump
whole
suck
body
me,
to suck your blood.
Yeah.
And he's naked.
I'm
And he's
out
naked.
Yes.
on hump sucking. I'm not into that vampire.
Stop
Like, it is
saying
now,
hump
they're
suck.
more like Buffy vampires where they're like, they're bad in this. Like, they're not like, oh, draw you. Like, I wouldn't want to have a romantic relationship with
Very
Orlok. I'm sorry.
visceral.
He's gross. That mustache is
He's
going too much.
decayed.
You know how much blood is stuck in that fucking mustache? Like, it's so gross.
Yeah, and he's
Sorry.
decaying.
Well,
Yeah,
He's decaying, yeah.
looks
I think the most important
unclean.
thing, though, the biggest deal breaker for me with Orlok is that he just doesn't seem to be gentle. He doesn't seem like so it's like I could get
That's a
past
good point.
looks. It's all about what's
He's not a
inside,
gentle
right?
lover.
He's not.
No,
He's an aggressive
because
lover.
because here's the thing is that like I mean he's naked, the other people are still clothed, so it's like he doesn't have any consideration for
Right.
anybody else.
Put on a
Comfort.
jacket or
That's
something.
kind of what I'm
dude.
saying. It was just he's not going to be a gentle lover.
Okay, so I do have two complaints. I do think the aesthetics, like, this should have won for cinematography. Like, it's
100%.
goddamn beautiful. But the two complaints I have are, you like the mustache, and I see the validity, I see the Vlad of it all. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, what
You hate
in
the
the
mustache.
hell is that rag on his face? And it's fine because you look at all the hairiness of the original. Right? You look at
Yeah.
the Renfield character's eyebrows were like
Yeah.
in the screen. So like I get it, and the Vlad of it all I get, but it was jarring. I expected a naked mole rat, and I didn't get a naked mole rat.
Okay.
I think that was the purpose too.
Yeah.
Because like I think that may be kind of like Egger's little bit of edgelord of just wanting to do something for the shock value of it.
Yeah, and
Because
mustache
who?
gives like skeezy
Yeah,
maturity.
He
His
looks like
maturity
a
gives kind of sleazy.
maybe he was a blacksmith, or like, I don't know, maybe like a really icky shopkeeper. I don't know. Like,
It's
I
like
don't know.
Rasputin. I mean, it's like
There you go.
because I mean, like even though it's Vlad the Impaler, I mean, like especially when he's outside with the hat on, it's like it's Rasputin. So,
But you're right. No, I like, because the idea that it's off-putting is the point, and so since I'm off-put by it, it did its job, right?
it did its job. Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to like it, but it did 100% do.
Do
its
my
job,
vampires have giant handlebar mustaches? No, my vampires
get
have
kind of
clean
Mine
shaven.
will now.
Yeah.
All of mine will now.
Mine will now. See, what about vampires with good beards? Like, we don't get that, right? That
That's
never
true.
happens.
Very
We
true.
don't need it now though, because we just saw perfection. All right, we just saw facial hair the way it was intended to for vampires. So there's
Yeah.
there's no reason
It's
to
the
do
only
anything
way.
else.
There's no going back.
So is Eggers going to work with all the Skarsgårds? Because he's worked with two of them now. Like, he's
I
going to
know.
run through them.
Knock them out, yeah.
And that family should do a family movie. I genuinely would love to see them do
I would
father
love
sons. And I would love it to be like in their native language and in their native land. Like, please, like, make a movie
Eggers
about
would do
you
that
guys.
too.
You know? He would.
That is what Eggers would do. I wonder if him and Bill are going to work again, and if Bill's.
I mean, considering he adopted Willem Dafoe.
I know. But think about. I mean, I don't know. I think about how much Bill puts into his characters and kind of what he pulled from just to create the voice alone.
Yeah.
And the amount of prosthetics on him. Like,
Yeah, he's
is there a part of him?
unrecognizable.
Is there a part of him that's like thinking, I hope this dude never calls me again? Like, because I don't
No.
want to go
He's
through
too
that
good.
again.
It's too
He
real.
is
Too
he is
eerie.
built to be people that you never see him on screen. Although he does still do movies where it's just
He kind
him,
of comes through a little bit, but yeah, like it was seamless, that makeup. Like I could not see him. I didn't feel any lines of makeup. It didn't.
Nope.
It felt like that was his face.
Kind of like when he was Pennywise. It felt like that was his face.
Yeah.
We have that hard line of 7:30, which means we do need to do rating and kill the show. As much as this has been a wonderful conversation, so let's do that real quick. Janine, what do you rate Nosferatu 2024?
Really enjoyed this film. I would give it a 9.5, and I will say, just I loved the interpretation of the infamous shadow. How they did
Me
that with the
too.
curtains. So
Yep.
I would ask you guys real quickly to say, when you rate, what was the interpreted moment that you liked the best from the original that they did here?
Ooh, I like that. And I have one. Ryan, what do you rate?
Oh, you go first because I need to think about my moment because
Okay.
she threw that one in there, so I got to think.
I'm going to give this a 9 as well. I think this was solid. This is one of the most aesthetically pleasing Gothic films I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you like Gothic anything, this is your movie. Like, if you're a emo kid, go watch Nosferatu. That said, my favorite moment was actually the interpretation of the book with the maiden at the end. So instead of it being the book, we see her give him the warning, which I really liked seeing them interpret what we would normally see in the silent film brought to the screen with dialogue. What about you, Ryan?
Oh, did you give a score?
I did. I said 9.
9. Okay.
Oh no, we lost Ryan without a rating.
Oh no.
We 925. No.
We were so close.
We hear
we
you.
We hear you, but we can't.
We hear you.
Wait.
So what do you rate and what's your scene if we can't get your video back? Oh no. Oh
we were
no.
So close.
He liked it a lot. He gives it a 9.5. His favorite scene was the ending. The poofy. What do you got, Ryan? I can hear you again. Oh no. So the reason we're having so many technical difficulties today is daylight savings time. We blame the clock change.
Yeah, we do.
That's why we were late.
All the clock's fault.
That's why Ryan's having problems. All the clock's fault. So, well, no, time. We're gonna get him back. That was weird. He was fine for an hour and a half. We apologize.
Yeah.
The real study. All right. Well, if we don't get him back in a second, we're going to have to call it good because this is the end of the show. We do have a special episode next week. I'll fill this part in case he comes back. We have a special episode next week where we're doing 2 Mel Brooks films. One of them is going to be Spaceballs. The other one is Young Frankenstein. And of course, Janine Levine and Black Girl Marvel have never seen Young Frankenstein. So that will be fun to get their takes on that. And for us to, of course, quote the movies 1,000 times. That said, it does look like we aren't going to get Ryan back, so I do need to end the show. But if you want to see his total actual rating, we will put that on the Letterboxd. You can find us on Letterboxd and see what the full rating was, so it may go up or down from 9.25. That said, Janine, thank you for being here. Thank you for Ryan for being here, even though you aren't here now, but thank you so much for being here. And we will see you guys all next week. Bye. Have a great night. Oh no.